Hey there, Aubrey. How's everything going today?
Hi, I'm great, Lindsay. How's your morning going?
It's good. I'm getting ready for a big trip coming up pretty soon, so it's hectic, but it's good. It's good.
Yes. Hectic is good, right? Keep you busy, keep you on your toes,
Whew.
but
Oh
sometimes
yeah.
it can be a little much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So what are we getting into today?
Well, I have a question for you.
All right. I'm always
We had a
ready.
great listener question that we're going to dive into to get today, which we will share with you. But first, I am curious, Lindsay, what do you think is one way that our listeners and students can help each other?
One way they can help each other. Good question. I think it's by leaving a review and a rating for the All Ears English podcast. Aubrey, why is that? How does that allow our students to help each other?
Yes, it's so true, right? The more listeners we have, the better questions we get, which
Yes.
makes for better episodes. And it's the best way to let other people know about the podcast, right? The more reviews there are, the more five-star ratings, the more people find out about the podcast, which will just increase how many good questions we have to answer.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Maybe another listener has a question that you have too, but you just don't think of it, right? We need
Hmm.
many heads here, many minds, many brains together to send us your questions so we can have fantastic episodes that we all can all help each other. So I want to shout out and announce the names of some reviewers. And remember, guys, when you review the show and rate the show, especially when you write an actual review, you get your name announced on the show. So thank you to Nagar Egbali from Iran. I can't read this person's name, but a reviewer on October 18th from China. K. Rio Riep from the US. TD Tubsen from Switzerland. And Domin SF from the US. Aubrey, these are
Awesome.
fantastic reviews. And I just want to say thank you.
Yes, thank you for the reviews, guys, of All Ears English, of all of our podcasts. We read them. We're excited for them. Leave questions and reviews. We love it.
I love it. So I'm going to go ahead and read the student question, the listener question,
All
so we
right.
can dive right in. Are you ready?
Yes, let's do it.
Here we go. Hi, Lindsay and Michelle. You are amazing. Thank you for your useful and interesting podcast. I love it. That's fantastic. Can you explain to me what is the difference between each other and one another? I'm never sure about it. Thank you, Vittoria. I love it. Such a good question. And actually, I wonder about that too, Aubrey, as a native speaker.
It's tricky, right? I guarantee you this is something native speakers don't really think about. They just know which one sounds right. They know which one to use from hearing English their whole lives, but it's not something that we think about, right? But
Yes. I
you
hope
will
there's a clear
notice
difference. Yeah.
yeah, right. In the question I asked you, right? What's a way our listeners can help each other? I
Mm-hmm.
used the first one there, each other. And this is really interesting to think about. How are they different? How are they interchangeable? So this will be a
Yes.
great topic to dive into today.
Oh my gosh. Let's just start by talking about each other. Let's break down each one and what are the differences and when can they actually be interchangeable for our listeners. So,
Yes.
each other, what's the vibe?
Yeah. So, first of all, it's a little bit less formal, right? Both each other and one another express that what they mean is that each person in a group of two or more does something to the others in the group. So, they are similar, they are often interchangeable, but we'll show some phrases to show you that each other is just a bit less formal and therefore used more often.
I definitely use this one more often. What about you,
Mhm.
Aubrey?
For
Would you?
sure.
Yeah.
Yes, there are times where I'll say one another, but it is quite a bit more formal.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's interesting is each other can be two people or more, whereas we'll talk about one another in a moment, but it's a little bit different.
Ah, I love it. Is there anything else that we need to know about each other?
Yeah, we're going to share a couple of examples here of when we would use each other, especially
Mm-hmm.
in business. This is super useful if you work in English. You might say, we're supporting each other on this deal. For
Okay.
sales, we hear that all the time. You have the whole sales team supporting each other.
Right. Or our listeners and students support each other in the Facebook groups. We've seen that with our courses. We have a Facebook group for many of our courses. And you see that every day, right, Aubrey? That our listeners
Yes.
support each other, they encourage each other, they welcome each other to the group. Yeah.
Yes, I love it. They can post their questions there. For each course we have, there's a Facebook group. So supportive and active. Very, very fun.
I
And
love
then
it.
how about this, just to say they carpool with each other. This is something I do almost
Mm.
every day.
Oh
Carpools
my
to
gosh,
different
every
kids'
day.
sports.
Wow.
I know, because when you have four children, they're each in different sports activities. You have to get the carpools together.
That is a lot of time in the car. I hope you like your car. Right?
Yes. But that's why you have the carpool, is so that I don't have to drive every week, right? If we can
True.
get 4 kids in a carpool, then I only
Right.
have to drive 1 out of 4 times. That's much
Actually,
better.
that's really good. It's like chunking the work, right? And so maybe you spend
Exactly.
a lot of time that one day going to everyone's houses, but those other weeks you do nothing. You don't have to. You just get picked.
Yes.
Your kid gets picked up. That must feel
Make sure your
amazing.
kid has
So
their
smart.
cleats and their soccer ball and send them out the door.
So good. Okay, so that's the gist of each other. Now let's flip to one another. How's it different?
Yes. So it's definitely more formal, and it's used to talk about more than 2 people. You cannot use it when you're just talking about 2 people like you can with each other, right? So that's
Okay.
interesting that it has to be more than 2 people. And it's usually for bigger ideas. Like you might hear someone say, love one another, be kind to one another. And if you think about it, it's usually not talking about one person's action. It's a little more general about what all people should do.
Okay, so I could have used this too then. Is that right, Aubrey? When we talked about our listeners leaving reviews to help one another
Yes,
because they're more obviously we
definitely.
have more than 2 listeners, clearly.
Yes. Yes. And
Yes.
that's where you can see they're sometimes interchangeable. Natives would
Yeah.
equally say, help each other or help one another by leaving a review. I hear both all the time. I use both.
Yeah, there's also to me a certain connotation of harmony when I hear the phrase one another. It feels like we're trying to create more of a sense of harmony. It's a little more like
Definitely.
theoretical. Do you have that too? Or is that just
Oh,
my
yeah.
weird? Yeah,
No, I
okay.
think you're right,
Yeah.
exactly, because often when we use this one another,
Hmm.
because it has to be more than 2 people, we're thinking often about the larger group,
Yeah.
right? Society in general, or all of our students together, right? Whereas
Yeah.
often when we use each other, it is 2 people or a smaller group. And so we're sort of thinking smaller.
Right. Like I'm sure that the phrase, for example, just to drive this idea home, the phrase one another would be more likely to be used in like a song from the 70s, like a John Lennon song or something.
Yes, right, for
You know what I
sure. We're
mean?
talking about peace and harmony.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes, for
yeah, like a
sure.
Beatles.
There's actually a song I've heard called "Love One Another,"
Okay,
and the
then
whole
that might
song is
actually
just
be
how
by
you
the
should love
Beatles. I
people.
don't know.
No, it's not the
For
Beatles,
example.
but they may have one like that for
I don't know
sure.
why, but my mind goes to like hippie culture in the 70s when I
I
hear
love
the
it.
phrase one another.
But you might hear it at work too, for sure. We use
Yeah.
this in business English. You might hear, if you're assigning responsibilities for a project or something, you could say, consider one another's strengths when assigning team responsibilities, right? And so we do use this sort of in a smaller sense as well.
Hmm.
It is interesting how it does have that little bit of a connotation of like positivity, of
Yeah,
like,
get
let's
along.
consider one another's strengths. Let's
Right.
let's do this the best way we can.
Right. Let's all get along. Let's make this
Mhm.
work, as a group. It does have a certain connotation, a positive connotation. I love it. Okay. What else do we need to know? Is there anything we can extend this episode
Yes.
into to give a little bonus for our listeners?
Yes. As I was preparing this, a lot of the sentences I was looking at, I was thinking I actually would say together instead. So I had to really think about this. I did the Google deep dive for you guys
The deep
because natives
dive.
don't think
Thank
about
you.
this like we said. And we often replace with together. If it's something we do together, instead of saying with each other, we'll say together, but only in certain contexts, right? So let's go into some of the prepositions that
Okay.
we use with together instead of with each other or with one another. And
Yeah.
then we'll share with you when we cannot say together instead. All
Okay,
right?
so we're giving our listeners a little bonus, a little extra
Mm-hmm.
learning for today. So, guys, this is additional, and let's see if we can get it. Here we go. They
Yeah.
carpool together,
Yeah.
right?
So when I wrote that example, they carpool with each other. That's
Hmm.
grammatically accurate. I wouldn't say that. I would say they carpool together, right? Whether I'm talking about 2 people or a big group, we often are going to, it's a little less formal and a little more native to say together instead.
Okay. Yeah. Or they talk together,
Hmm.
which you could also say they talk to each other, right?
Yes. And
Hmm.
again, I had that, I think, in the role play. I was like, they talk to each other. And then it's grammatically correct, but it's just one of those things where natives, in order to be more informal, maybe in order to be faster, we often instead will say they talk together.
Okay. But I also feel like when we just say they talk, because if it's just the two of them,
Yes.
almost feels a little redundant to me to say they talk together, depending on the context, I guess.
Very good point, right? Depending on the
Hmm.
context, we often will drop all of it. We won't say each other. We won't say together.
It's
It's
obvious.
implied,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
they're talking, they talk, we know who's there, so we won't say either. That's a really good point.
Yeah. Love it. What else? What else?
So instead of for each other, we would say like they decide together, right? Instead of they decide for someone, together they decide.
I love it. Or they throw the ball together, or this means they throw the ball at each other.
Exactly, right? So that at each other, I'm doing something at another person. Also, often we'll just say together. They're throwing the ball together.
Yeah. Or they stand together, meaning next to each other. Let's say they go to a parade or a concert or something. They stand together.
Exactly.
Yes.
So we could say by, beside, or next to, by each other. Instead, we often will just say together. They stand together.
I like it. I like it. Is there something else? Is there a time when we don't do that?
Yeah, we promise this. We want to share when we do not do this, right? You can't say together when it's not something you do together with another person, right? If it's something you do as an individual. So, for example, care about, think about, love each other or one another. You can't say together. You can't say, we care together, we love together. So, when it's an action that you do as an individual or as a group, but not something that you do together, does that make sense? You
Yeah,
can't
that's
use the
interesting.
word together.
Right. Because, I guess it kind of points more to physical position or having to be in the same space. Right. And love, care for is something that happens in your head emotionally.
Yes, exactly,
So,
right. They're more metaphorical actions, state of verbs, these things where we're not actually
state of verbs.
doing
Yes.
something.
Yes.
It's if it's a state of being or something that
State
you
of
really
being.
can only do as an individual. If you
Yes.
can't do it together with another person, so we wouldn't say it that way.
I love it. Aubrey, I think we should jump right into the role play and save the little bonus for another episode so that our
Sounds
listeners
good.
can make sure they just master what we're doing here today.
Okay,
All
so in this
right.
role play, you're a high school teacher. You're giving instructions to me, your student, and
Okay.
I'm working on a group project with other students.
Okay.
Often we need more people for some of these verbs, right? For
Sounds like
some
a
of these
common
phrases.
situation for together and each other. I love it. Here we go. Did you talk to each other to come up with a plan?
Yes, we met up with each other and figured out a timeline and our theme, which is showing compassion to one another.
Awesome. You'll need to brainstorm with each other again today to divide responsibilities.
Awesome. So we've used a few of them here. Let's go through to make sure we can understand why, right?
Yep.
So, first, did you talk to each other? And again, just like you said, you could say, did you talk to come up with a plan?
Did you
Or
talk?
did you
Right.
talk together? But we would often drop both to save time and just say, did you talk?
Yeah, I like it. I like it. And then, let's see, you said we're coming
We
up with
met
a
up with
theme.
each other,
How we
right?
met up with each other and figured out a timeline and our theme, which is showing compassion to one another, right?
Exactly. So we have both here, right? We met up with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we could just say we met up and drop with each other.
I think, yeah.
We might say, just we met up and figured out a timeline. Or we could use together. We met together and figured out a timeline. So definitely options. They all mean the same thing. You'll hear natives use them all, but we do often drop with each other is implied very often.
I love it. And then I said, awesome. You'll need to brainstorm with each other, right? Again today to divide responsibilities. So that basically means, or you could have said, you'll need to brainstorm together.
Yes. And again, could just drop it, right? You'll need to brainstorm today, right? Because it's implied that that's something you will do with each other or together.
It'd be really interesting, just for a little cultural insight today, to take transcripts of everyday life. If we could somehow get, for example, in the US versus, let's say, Japan, another country where maybe values are more towards the group versus the individual. And if we could pull out the amount of together words that we use in English in our daily lives versus in a country like Japan or somewhere else that values that
Would be
collective
fascinating.
space.
Right?
Yes.
A quantitative study of
Yep.
all the times people say together or each other words, phrases like this in different languages. I would love to read that.
Sociolinguistic. So if we have any sociolinguists or anyone who's involved in cultural anthropology, linguistic anthropology, if you want to go do that study, we will interview you on
We
All
would
Ears
love
English. That's the kind of thing we love. I love it. Good stuff. And I also just want to note, sometimes in English, we just say together, like for example, at a sporting event or someone as as an orchestra, right? If someone's together, all together now, we just use the word together as kind of something we shout out
right?
Right?
Meaning everyone all at once. Everyone
Yes.
at the same time will just say together or together now.
Love it. All right, Aubrey, what's the takeaway for our listener? We covered a lot, but we focused in really clearly on just a few things here.
Yes, for sure. And this vocabulary, each other, one another, it is extremely useful both in regular conversations and in business English. It's really interesting to think about this and know when you can drop it, when they're interchangeable, right? Whether you're working with others on a project or chatting with friends, knowing how to use these will definitely come in handy.
Yeah, for sure. And if you guys are working in a multinational global workplace, and you have colleagues from other parts of the world, especially if maybe from cultures that value this coming together more than maybe your culture does, try throwing these words in more often and see what happens. That might help you build the rapport. This is the level we have to be at if we're going to be global professionals, right, Aubrey?
Yes, definitely. That is the best way to build that network, right? That
Oh,
network that you need to be a successful business professional.
I love it. So good, so thoughtful and interesting. I love it. All right, Aubrey, I'll see you in the next one. Have a good
Awesome.
one.
Thanks, Lindsay. Bye bye.
Bye.